Transmitter device activated. Coordinates set for Earth 2.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Earth 2 podcast, your weekly exploration of the DC Comics multiverse and the legacy of their Golden Age characters through the Silver and the Bronze Ages of comics. I'm Peter Watson.
And I'm David Steele. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. We're recording in the same room for the first time in ages, which is nice.
Hey.
Listeners, this week's episode, before you get any further with it, we would encourage you to go back and listen to episode 121, released on the 8th of September 2022. Because that's one of our fabled and ones that we love doing, one of our portmanteau episodes. Manhunters, prompted by the appearance of Manhunter 20-umpteen, whatever he was.
2070.
2070, thank you. In later issues of Showcase. And obviously that led to us talking about the various different Manhunters published by both DC and Quality Comics back in the day. So we're going to have a quick tea break now, whilst you all go and listen to episode 121.
That was delicious. Oh, you're back. Excellent.
Good. Thank you for joining us. I'm David Steele.
And I'm Peter Watson.
Yes. Wouldn't it be funny if we just cut the entirety of episode 121 right in? Anyway, no. So if you have had time to listen to that episode, you'll be aware that Peter discussed the initial Manhunters published by DC. One chap who helped the cops out and was called Paul Kirk, and another guy called Rick Nelson who rocked up for one episode, and then another guy called Paul Kirk who seemed very similar to Rick Nelson, who kept the strip going for the duration. And we sort of agreed that the two Paul Kirks were probably different guys, didn't we, Peter?
Yes, we did at the time. As I said, the first Paul Kirk seemed to be a detective, whether he was actually working for the police or one of these, keen amateurs, like Sherlock Holmes sort of style, that would help out. Very, very prevalent in the fiction and pulps of the time. Whether he was that or actually a police detective, it wasn't hugely clear for most of the stories.
Interesting. I'll have to come round to yours and we can go down into the archives and I can leaf through your complete collection of adventure comics.
We should do that.
Have a look at them.
Yes.
Or maybe DC could put them out with a nice hardback edition that's a reasonable price.
Can you imagine?
Anyway, I can imagine it right now. Maybe they'll do that Johnny Quick one and that Rex the Wonder Dog. It's good that they brought out that Detective Chimp one.
Oh, yes. Fantastic. Yeah, that was good.
My wee sister got me that for my Christmas. After someone who was very helpful in the shop suggested it to her as an idea. So well done, whoever that was.
Oh, that's good. Must be Clive.
I think it was you. Anyway, I've completely got away from the point. Yes, so DC, if you're listening, we really appreciate with that Detective Chimp collection, and we'd like some more like Johnny Thunder or Rex the Wonder Dog with the Losers or something. Anyway, so this week's episode, to drag us screaming back to the point, is essentially prompted by the publication of issue 443 of Detective Comics, released on the 30th of July, 1974, a few weeks after Ringo's 34th birthday, if you're paying attention to such things. And the reason we're doing this one is because it's the culmination, the end game, if you like, of a backup strip that had run in Detective Comics from issue 437, published in July 1973, roughly a year ago as the crow flies for this comic, all the way up to issue 442, and then joining Batman for the lead story of 443. And this strip is called Manhunter. And it's very famous because it was written by Archie Goodwin and drawn by Walt Simonson. I hadn't read it all before we came to do a prep for this. A lot of my prep for the Power of Three, the Doctor Who podcast that I'm still occasionally involved in, was sort of delayed because I was having to read Manhunter. And that's led to a very stressful couple of weeks of trying to read everything.
Yes.
Which has been fun. And yeah, essentially, Walt and Archie, basically, they did one of the best comics ever, wouldn't you say, Peter?
It's up there, yeah. It's an incredible run. It's a short run, but it's so impactful. It's the storytelling in this. We are not going to do it justice, folks. Definitely not. We strongly suggest you seek out these original issues or one of the collections that this has been put in. But certainly for a series of backups and then this one final Batman issue, it is such a powerful and beautiful story.
I was just saying to Pete before we started recording, I was a bit sort of don't believe the hype about this before I read it in prep, and I was sort of kicking myself for not having read it sooner. I've had all the Detective Comics 100 pages for like 30 years, as we all know, so I probably could have read some of them before now. I probably did flick through this main story whenever I got issue 443. We're not going to read you the entire saga, the entire story from 437 all the way through 443. So what I'm going to do is give you a basic gist sort of recap of the events of 437 up to 442 before we join Manhunter and Batman. This will sort of give us the background of this new version of the character and give you the idea of basically what's going on as a sort of preamble before 443. But the story in 443 works fine. It gives you everything you really need to know, but it's probably worth going into some detail about what happens beforehand. And as Peter said, I would encourage you also to strongly track down one of the many reprinted editions there's been if you haven't done so already. So basically, beginning in 437, set in present day, and we are introduced to an Interpol agent called Christine St. Clair, who's on the trail of one called Manhunter, and who we learn is named Paul Kirk. And the series goes to great pains to tell us that this is the same Paul Kirk who hunted big game and fought criminals wearing a red and blue costume during World War II in the later adventure comic stories that Peter told us about in our 121st episode. During the course of the Detective Comics backup, we are told that after the war, Paul Kirk went back to big game hunting, but he found that his attitude had changed and it was all a bit brutal and senseless to him now. So that's good. The war taught him something. Out on a hunt one day, Paul deliberately misses a shot, but the sound alarms a massive bull elephant that charges him and leaves him on the verge of death. We're then told how Paul is taken and cryogenically frozen and revived 25 years later when he is healed. The revived Paul learns from a Dr. Mykos that he has been improved as well as healed, and that Mykos is a member of the Council, a group of 10 scientists who have assembled with the intent of saving the human race from itself. Pollution, war, that sort of thing. Not only have the Council looked after Paul, but they've also created an army of clones from the cells of his body to act as their enforcement branch, and Paul has many encounters with them through the series. Paul is trained in Ninjutsu by Asano Nitobe and learns that the genetic surgery the Council have performed on him has given him super enhanced healing abilities.
Kind of like DC's Wolverine.
That's a very interesting point, yes. Paul Kirk starts to have doubts about the Council and their methods and intentions, pioneered mainly by a Dr. Oka who's since died. And when Paul is sent to murder a senior member of Interpol, he rebels and tries to warn Damon Nostrand, who is his intended target. Nostrand, however, reveals himself to be an ally of the Council, and Paul must fight a group of his clones to escape. And of course, Nostrand is Christine St. Clair's boss. Christine joins forces with Manhunter on learning that Nostrand has put both of them on the international wanted list. As the story progresses, we learn that Christine's own father is involved with the Council. I'm not going to tell you every single plot development because if you haven't read it, there's some really good twists and turns. I don't want to
very layered, yes.
We also meet Kolo Mimbea, who's a weapons maker whose father had known Kirk, and he sets Kirk up with all of his new fighting equipment, ninja stars and swords and what have you. The run of the backup strip concludes with Kirk's teacher Asano Nitobe agreeing to join Paul against the Council after he hears evidence that the Council had killed Dr. Oka themselves because he disagreed with their plans. Essentially, the Council are less, shall we say, idealistic than we're initially given the impression. So all of that takes us to the end of issue 442. As I say, I've missed out lots of the story beats because there's some real gems and some amazing storytelling. But we'd be here all night if I was to try and give you the full plot details. We would encourage you to read. And that brings us all to Detective 443. And Peter's going to tell you about the cover.
It's a 100-pager, folks. DC 100 pages for only 60 cents at the top. There's the Batman in a lovely oval at the top, above the Detective Comics logo, approved by the Comics Code Authority. But the main image of the cover, we have Batman and Manhunter. Back to back, Manhunter, weapons drawn, his broom handle Mauser in his left hand, and his Bundy dagger drawn in the other hand. They are surrounded by machine gun wielding hoods, and in the background there's a chap with a red cape, a yellow suit, balding head but with long hair at the sides.
A skullet, if you will.
A skullet, yes. And he's shouting, "Now, fire!" And there's a caption that says, "The Batman and Manhunter together for the first and last time." And at the bottom we have headshots of other characters featuring in stories in this issue, including Robin, the Spectre, the all-new Manhunter, which is a bit of a cheat because I've already seen him.
Yes.
The Creeper, and Alan Scott Green Lantern.
Yes, which reminds us, if it needs to be said, and we've probably said it already when we've done these episodes recently, is that the 100 pages were an absolute goldmine of good reading. And I'm sure I'll say the same thing again next week when we do a Shazam 100-pager. Anyway, so let's dive in. Interestingly, the contents page for this issue is a nice image of Batman and Manhunter rendered by Walt Simonson, which doesn't seem to have been reprinted in any of the
No,
The ones that we have to hand.
I'm reading from the special edition, which came out in 1999.
And I have to hand the hardcover edition, which came out in 2020.
And I've just checked the artist edition, which I have here, which reprints all the original art from it, and that page is not in this either.
Interesting. I'm, of course, reading from Detective 443 just for that extra authenticity, because as the stories have been reprinted many times, they've been recoloured many times, but we want to be as true to the original intention. But this contents page might well end up in the socials, actually, because as Batman and Manhunter stand there, we're also told in this issue that there are stories with the Spectre, Green Lantern, the Creeper, Batman and Robin, and some bonus pin-ups. Page 24 is that. Okay, let's see what they are. Just some nice images of Batman and Manhunter, which I'm sure are reprinted elsewhere many times. In fact, the image of Manhunter is in the back cover of the hardcover from 2020, so that's fun. Right, but anyway, all that preamble. We've killed the momentum of my recap. But anyway, we begin in rain-soaked Gotham City. A caption reads...
Prologue. Rain. The waterfront. A floating body. Familiar elements to Commissioner Gordon, but... always grim ones, and this night, more grim than usual.
Yes, we can see a number of police cars down by the docks. Commissioner Gordon and a few other folk are standing on a little jetty. There's a rowboat, one cop standing up in the boat, another policeman obviously rowing. And as Peter's caption had just told us, they've pulled a body out of the river. The cop standing in the boat says,
"We got him, sir.
I suppose there's no mistake."
I took that martial arts course he and Batman gave at the police academy. It's Dan Kingdom, all right."
We see in the next panel that the body that's pulled from the water is a youngish-looking blonde fellow. The cop that first spoke has got a sheet to cover him up, and he's saying,
"Who'd think it? Ex-Green Beret, 9th degree black belt."
Commissioner Gordon says, "Good, but not against a shotgun." Next panel is a wider shot. We're looking down on the jetty as Gordon continues, "Use the bat signal. We've got to tell..."
Sir?
And he's interrupted because he points up as a familiar shadow is cast over the scene, and the young cop continues,
He's here.
"Yep, Batman has arrived. They don't have to tell him." We see Bat sleeping down. He lands beside Commissioner Gordon and the others, and Gordon says, "Batman, how?"
Dan sent word to meet him. He felt he was onto something involving the Prime Minister of Congola.
"Why, there's a party honouring his visit at Bruce Wayne's mansion."
Whatever Dan learned, it's cost Gotham a fine police detective, and me, a best friend. That mustn't be for nothing,
says Batman as he fires his line, grabs hold of it and goes flying off. That takes us to page 2.
Much of the year, Wayne Manor is dark, but not tonight.
Yes, great shot of Wayne Manor looking completely unlike any Wayne Manor I've ever seen. Quite frankly, the captioning continues as we see party guests inside.
Tonight, lights burn for this man, Ndeli Kishumbo, Prime Minister of the new African nation Congola, a land once enslaved by military dictatorship. Now, after long bitter fighting, he and his people are free.
Yes, we've seen in Delhi, looking very smart in a blue safari-style jacket, a glass of wine in his hand, mixing in the throng. A nice sort of inset panel at the left here. We see someone assembling a rifle with various clicks and ratchets and snaps and clacks and looking down the sights and seeing in Delhi, and then, with a crushing inevitability, 3 shots fire out, and Ndeli goes flying, his glass dropping from his hand, startled guests scattering as the bullets hit his body. A caption reads,
"Timing. For the assassin, perfect. For the Batman, reappearing as Bruce Wayne, awful."
Yes, we see Bruce Wayne's head whirling as he hears the gunshots and interestingly casting a shadow of the Batman.
Hey.
As he makes his exit, jumps over a banister.
Now he races for his barely abandoned cape and cowl. Now he moves toward the beginning of a bloody trail to GOTTERDAMMERUNG.
Yes, that's the awkward to pronounce title of today's story. What does that mean then, Peter?
GOTTERDAMMERUNG literally means Twilight of the Gods. Figuratively, the term's extended to situations of world-altering destruction marked by extreme chaos and violence.
Well, that's obviously what I think the council were trying to cause with their methods. But
They're
yes,
all about the Wagner.
Yes. Page 3 is I mean, we have to talk about the way that Walt Simonson has structured this. It's
Oh God, yeah.
panels within panels and inserts and stuff, but it all works very fluidly and it's gorgeous. But the main part of this image on page 3 is the now cape and cowl Batman arriving and finding the assassin with a gun in his hand. A caption reads,
He has moved with a swiftness, a sureness few mortals could, But the Batman takes no satisfaction in it.
Yes, and Bats is thinking,
Too late. Again. Didn't reach Dan Kingdom in time to help. And now Kshumbo. Murdered in my own home.
yes. I should probably describe the assassin. A rather craggy-looking black man in a very smart brown suit, and it's him that's assembled the rifle that's taken out the now deceased Premier. The captioning continues.
Then all thoughts are gone, and there is only a killer to bring low.
Yes, the assassin runs for it, basically, and we see Batman chasing him through and out of Wayne Manor. As you arrive at the top of page 4, Batman manages to catch up with the assassin, bringing him to the ground, as the man cries, "Enforcer, he's got me! That devil Bat's got me good!" And then off camera, in the next panel, as we get an insert of Batman, a voice says, "Yes, but not for long." And a figure is revealed wearing what he kind of reminds me of the Constrictor. Is that the right name?
Oh, yeah.
The Marvel villain?
Marvel villain, yeah, huh?
It's a very textured green outfit, orange boots, a predominantly green mask with sort of orange highlights and almost orange ear type circular things on it. With orange gloves, but there's a sort of ribbed detail to his legs and a ribbed thing down the front of his face. Significantly, this mask has been recoloured to be predominantly golden in some of the other editions, so bear that all in mind if you like. The captioning continues.
The voice muffled within the mask is restrained. The blows that follow are not. One is an offbeat variation on the leopard's paw knuckle strike and meant to kill.
Yes, and we see the Enforcer and Batman fighting for the rest of page 4. The captioning continues as Batman is down.
It fails, only because the Batman has faced it before, can roll with it slightly. Still, for a moment, its use stuns him.
Yes, we see Batman obviously recovering his wits on the ground as the Enforcer and his mates are legging it in the background. We arrive at the top of page 5. Captioning continues.
And against skilled, well-organised foes, even a moment makes a difference.
Yes, Batman attempts to recover, runs after them, but the Enforcer and the Assassin have climbed into a motorcycle and sidecar and roared off. Batman too late to catch up with them.
But
Batman notices something on the ground and thinks,
For someone that good, they made a very bad mistake.
yes, the rifle has been left behind in the grass. The next panel is captioned.
the assassin's weapon is not an ordinary one, and it is untraceable by ordinary means.
Take a drink, listeners, because there's a full moon in the next panel as Batman stands looking epic atop a skyscraper with the rifle over his shoulder as the captioning continues.
But this is the Batman. He and his sorceries are not ordinary.
Yes, in the next panel we see Batman entering what looks like a very fusty and dusty bookshop. It could almost be my front room. And there's an elderly gentleman with one of those little visors that you used to see Wookiees using in old films and stuff, and lots of rats crawling around, which means I'm going to send this panel to my little sister because she hates rats. And the old gentleman behind the desk in this little fusty-looking bookshop type emporium says, "I'm clean, crime fighter."
Sure, Mole. Like your bookshop, but I'm not here to hassle you. I want information.
And he drops the rifle into the mole's hands.
About this.
The mole says, "Say, that's merchandise. Spankin' new and specially crafted. A few crates of these and I'd never have to schlep another used book." Starts to examine the weapon in the first panel of page 6.
No, but you'll schlep a lot of rock in federal prison, like the last time you sold illegal arms. I want advice, Mole, not to bring you out of retirement.
Yeah. Nobody loves me for myself, only my expertise. Well, I'd say the stock assembly design was Goodwin, the Belgian. Only he's dead 3 years. This ammo feed system smacks of Chol Kum, a Korean, also deceased. One guy trained under both, based in Nairobi, Oxford grad no less. Kolo Mbea.
Okay, Mole. I'll see there's some extra cheese for your rats.
And with that, Batman takes his leave. Again, listeners, the artwork over these couple of pages is stunning as Mole and Batman are having a conversation. We're over the shoulder of a little rat perched on a book watching them. It's gorgeous. Seek this out if you haven't done so already. I know that Steve told me he grabbed a copy recently. Anyway, a nice wide shot of the city. The next panel, as a caption reads,
And the trail that began with 2 deaths during one rain-swept Gotham night shifts to another continent, where a brilliant African sun drenches Nairobi's buildings, modern and ancient. Among them, this one.
Yes, and we see a new modern brick build. There's a sign outside that says Safari Shop. And from inside, a voice can be heard saying, "You must be joking, Manhunter. Under cover of this shop, I manufacture arms for the black rebel groups I support. And since you're my father's friend, I also design your equipment. But join in raiding some super organization stronghold? Hardly my style. And we cut inside the shop, and we see that the speaker is the aforementioned Coley Mbeya, and also in the room are Manhunter Paul Kirk, Christine Sinclair, and Asano Nitobe. Manhunter replies to Kolo, saying, Christine, Asano, and I need a good weapons man to back us, Kolo. You're the best. But my speciality is designing these. Anyone could shoot them, says Kolo as he has a look through the sights of a rifle he's working on. This council is nothing to me. I'll hold to my speciality. Weapons you can have, but not my personal... And he stops, saying, what? Because reflected upside down in the sight of the rifle is a very familiar figure.
For the Batman, this seems the end of the line.
You see Batman standing on the rooftop of a building across the road looking down at the safari shop. The caption continues,
Below is the shop of Kolu Mbeya, and he has learned much about this man. Unlike most traffickers in arms, Mbeya believes in the causes he supports. And if one such cause was a faction opposing Congola's new Prime Minister Ndeli Kishumbo, then Mbeya could well have provided more than the weapon of assassination. He could have provided the assassin himself. Such are the Batman's thoughts as a deadly game unfolds, involving many players.
And what we see over this page 7 of the story, Batman looking down at the safari shop. But behind him, in a much taller building, we see the silhouette of someone watching Batman. The camera tracks towards, we see another black man in a very smart suit holding a fancy rifle, who we then see dropping into position and sighting so he can take a shot at Batman. But just as he's about to pull the trigger, he looks to his right and sees the lower leg quarters of Manhunter. This would-be assassin exclaims, "No!" drops the rifle with a clunk, gets up, tries to run away, shouting down, "Batman, don't let him get me!" Batman looks around, and this would-be assassin, as he starts to run away from Manhunter, cries, "Listen! I'll tell you everything, but you gotta protect me. The council ordered me to kill Kishumbo and see that it led to Mbeya. I had to do it. Their new enforcer was watching every step of the way." And at this point, these guys managed to get down from the roof of this building he's on and join Batman, grabbing at his chest. He continues saying, "It was his idea that attacking you here on Kula's doorstep would cinch..." He stops, lets go of Batman and slides to the ground. And we see that he's basically been shot in the back because there's a smoking pistol in the hand of one who introduces himself as, "I'm Paul Kirk. You may know me as Manhunter," he says this to Batman, who replies,
I know you as a man said to be ruthless, but this is cold-blooded murder, as bad as the assassin you've killed.
He was gambling, that sharing the truth would make us listen, hesitate, until he was close enough to use this. And we see that Manhunter is searching the now dead assassin, and he's pulled out what looks like a very, very small but very, very sharp blade. Manhunter continues, "He lost, but he would have stabbed you and used your corpse as a shield to escape from me."
I've been threatened by knives before, and came out of it without killing anyone, or being killed.
"They tell me once is all it takes. We can talk about it inside." We see them entering the safari shop, Batman saying,
I'd rather talk about that group Kishumbo's killer mentioned.
"The council," Manhunter clarifies. Then we get a good shot of the other members of Manhunter's supporting cast as he introduces, "Meet Christine Sinclair and Asano Nitobe, Batman." Christine stands saying, "We've become experts in the council." Manhunter continues, "But Kolo here is a bit to learn." Then Kolo says, "We'd best move to my workshop. The store is hardly ideal for a convention."
As they descend secret stairs, Manhunter tells a story about 9 scientific geniuses who set out to save the world.
And Manhunter concludes, "and ended trying to control it." Then Christine says, "And their organization is big enough to succeed. Asano and I are rebels from their cause."
Christine's father died for failure in serving it.
And Batman says,
Now, they seem out to get you, Mbeya, through their choice in assassination weapons.
a close-up of Mbeya to round out page 9 as he says, "Manhunter, your raid in council headquarters has just gained a new recruit." And with that, he clicks his rifle. Listeners, I hope this is all making sense.
It's so much is told visually. It's incredible.
It's great.
Yeah,
It's glorious. I mean, the dialogue covers it and stuff, but it's
Mhm.
it's the synergy of it all is beautiful. I mean, this is one of the most modern close inverted commas comics we've ever done.
Mhm.
In response to Mbeya, Batman says,
Make that 2. If Ndeli Kishumbo's death weren't enough, the council's also cost me a best friend. Dan Kingdom.
"Thanks, Batman," says the Manhunter, "but no thanks. You have your own code and ways of operating. Within them, you're fine. But you're not a killer, and this is a killing mission." And for emphasis, He throws his knife, which sticks into the wall above Batman's head. The next panel, Christine says, I'm afraid he's right, Batman. Against the Council's elite, it's the only way. I'm sorry. As an Interpol agent, I heard much about you. I wish we could have worked together.
You're fellow professionals. I respect your decision, even if I don't agree with it. Goodbye, Miss Sinclair.
Batman takes his leave. A caption reads,
With the coming of another dawn, they are ready. Paul Kirk, man of two eras, resurrected by the Council's super science. Asano Natobi, master ninja, instructor to Manhunter. Plus Christine Sinclair and Kolo Mabea. 4 deadly experts moving toward the challenge of their lives.
Yes, and under that captioning, we see Manhunter and Christine and the lads climbing into a fancy old vintage car and driving to an airfield where a large aircraft is waiting for them.
2 1,200 horsepower engines cough into life, and the mission begins.
Yes, we see the airplane taking off. In the next panel, we see the airplane interior. Kolo's flying, the others are sat down behind. Kolo's saying, My company's private aircraft has all the clearances we require, but Asano best join me, since he's the only one who knows the exact location of the Council's hidden sanctuary. We cut to Christine Manhunter. Christine, obviously played by Jennifer Saunders in this panel. She says, You get very quiet when we travel, Paul, and grim. It's when I'm most reminded how much the world has changed since my death back in 1946. Except for meeting people like you and Asano, Christine, there's not much that makes me glad of being restored to life by the Council. It's part of the reason I fight them so ruthlessly. I didn't welcome death, but coming out of World War II, weary, disillusioned, I found a kind of peace in it. A peace the Council shattered. All of that speechifying by Paul, told again over some beautiful Walt Simonson artwork. A caption reads in the next panel.
Long miles of ocean slip beneath the plane's gleaming wings as time slips slowly away for Manhunter and Christine.
Yes, Paul seemingly has kept talking for the whole flight. We can hear him from inside the plane, giving us a handy recap for those of us who haven't read the backup strip at this point. I owe Dr. Mycross and his 8 fellow council members a good deal, Christine. Besides my peace, they stole the one thing that's any human's right, his individuality. They cloned me, duplicated me over and over, took my uniqueness and turned it into an army of ciphers. Each time I kill one of those damn clones, I feel I'm reclaiming part of myself. But he's interrupted as Kolo comes over the intercom saying, Kirk, Miss Sinclair, Australia's great outback below. Prepare for landing.
The plane sets down. On a map, this area is the Gibson Desert, but for these new arrivals, it is enemy territory.
Manhunter, Asano and Christine have already left the plane, but we can see Kolo fiddling about with what looks like a radio. And Manhunter calls to him from outside saying, Let's move, Kolo. Asano says this sector isn't normally well patrolled, but... And as he exits the plane, Kolo says, Merely setting a few booby traps. It never hurts to be... But then there's a sudden... BAM! And Kolo pitches forward onto the ground. The others rush towards him. Christine cries, Kolo! Manhunter yells, Everyone down! And Asano cries...
They are behind the near ridge.
And we can see they're all being fired upon. They're ducking behind the airplane for cover. Manhunter grabs at Kolo's body, saying, I'll draw their fire, Asano. You and Christine flank them. To which Christine says, But Manhunter, we can't just leave Kolo. I'm afraid, Christine, our staying can't help him. Now, let's get those.
Wait, the firing has ceased,
says Asano. Christine says, and much too abruptly to be natural. And another voice tells us this is...
Correct. I only wish I'd arrived sooner, for Kolo's sake.
And Batman has arrived in the scene, looking a bit saggy, actually, it must be said, in this panel. He's showing up 2 hopefully unconscious men in orange jumpsuits, presumably the guys that took out Kolo. Manhunter exclaims, Batman! But only Asano knew the way here. How?
I'm something of a manhunter myself, Kirk. Now, do I continue operating alone, or do we admit, despite previous differences, that it's time...
We join forces.
Good,
says Batman, as the 2 masked manhunters shake hands.
A bauxite mining operation north of here seems to hide the sanctuary's entrance, but...
He's interrupted by Asano, who says,
It is too heavily guarded for direct assaults. Come, you have scouted well, Batman, but some approaches only a man living over half his life with the Council could know.
And we see Asano reaching down and lifting up the lid to
a ventilation shaft.
Awesome.
A plan of battle is swiftly drawn, and the descent begins into the heart of the sanctuary.
Hopefully there'll be room to put this panel on the socials, listeners, because it's a nice little cutaway as we get a view, sort of reverse angled, almost looking up the ventilation shaft. We see the structure inside as Batman and Manhunter and Asano and Christine all climb down.
At some point, they will be discovered. They know this. What is important is sensing when, before the enemy, so any challenge may be met and countered.
Yes, and all this captioning has played out over the first couple of panels of page 14. As we see a nice shot of Asano and a very subtle sound effect as suddenly hatches open in the ceiling and a number of green and orange clad figures drop down towards our heroes, and we see Asano very helpfully dispatching all three of them in one go with a massive
rap
sound effect. The heroes pick up the pace in the next panel as Manhunter cries, "Christine, that maintenance ladder, it can take us above the main chambers. We'll be home free." But he's interrupted as another figure in green, who we met earlier in the story, the one that reminded us of the Constrictor, appears and punches Paul Kirk Manhunter, sending him flying, saying, "If you scale it, Manhunter, but surely as I'm called the Enforcer, you won't. Healing factor or no." With this we see the Enforcer, for it is him punching down hard on Paul, who's down on the ground. Batman, leaping to Paul's rescue, cries,
"On your way, Manhunter!"
As with a crack, he kicks the Enforcer, sending him flying. See Paul starting to come to his senses. Batman standing in the final panel of page 14 saying,
"The Enforcer and I are overdue settling Dan Kingdom's death."
"You know, don't you, Batman? You know who I am."
"Because you overused that knuckle strike variation. It gave you away in Gotham, and trying to use it now to set you up for a counterpunch."
"Except one blow won't do it, Batman. Not even one from you." And that conversation played out over a very dynamic fight between Batman and the Enforcer. Maybe there'll be room for it in the socials, at very least, panel 2.
But Batman and the Enforcer are merely two combatants in a much larger battle. Elsewhere, Asano Notobi and a flailing nunchaku figure vitally.
As Paul and Christine start to climb up the ladder, we see Asano using his nunchucks as described, as Batman struggles with the Enforcer in the foreground. In the final panels of page 15, we see that Manhunter and Christine have reached the top of the maintenance ladder. Manhunter looks down, saying, "He's brought us a clear ascent, Christine. Now we've got to see that it pays off."
Behind Manhunter and Christine, another payoff looms.
Batman and the Enforcer are squaring up with the Enforcer, saying, "It's been fairly even, Batman, but you're starting to hesitate, because you can't forget who I am. In the end, that's going to win for me."
"Yes, only I now realize that the man I remember no longer exists,"
says Batman, kicking the Enforcer in the face very emphatically, knocking off his helmet.
"I don't know how the Council corrupted you. Manhunter claims he can dangle wealth, power, even extended life. Whatever, it made you completely the Enforcer, not the friend I call Dan Kingdom."
Yes, and with the Enforcer's mask torn off, we see that Batman is fighting with Dan Kingdom, who was, to all intents and purposes, so we thought, the body that was pulled out of the river at the start of the story. Kingdom's down on the ground. In the next panels, Batman stands over him, saying,
"The Council may have planted a clone's body in Gotham's East River to cover your joining them, Dan, but it was still you who died." Meantime,
yes, we're with Manhunter and Christine. Manhunter has lifted up a grill, saying, "This is the access hatch we want, Christine. Leads right to the raid's success or failure. Once I'm through it, I'll signal you to bring the others. If I don't," Christine says, "we can get out fast as we can. I understand, Paul, but I don't like..." "Yet you're pro enough to do it anyway. Makes it much easier for me. No matter what happens, once I face Dr. Mycross." And with that, Manhunter drops into the hatch, into a large chamber, which we can see has a throne at the heart of it. Elderly-looking man wearing a very fancy ornate crown, which is a touch of the Mike Grell's, to my eyes, to it. This is indeed the Council's central chamber. The figure sat in the chair says,
"Welcome home, my boy. That you've gotten this far confirms those abilities we admired in you from the start. Not that those abilities will save you from the death trap you've so blithely entered. Our council chamber has been vastly altered since your last appearance here, so even this rather vigorous cut-off-the-head-and-the-body-die strategy you and your allies attempt is doomed."
We get a closer look at his headgear. Very, very fancy, as he continues,
"This psionic helmet, which once merely maintained thought contact between me and my 8 fellow councilmen in the suspended animation capsules, now cybernetically links our combined mental force with the Sanctuary's entire power and communication systems. Do you know what might that gives us?"
There's a little inset here, and there's a zik sound effect as we see what's presumably the hatch that Paul has just dropped through closing behind him. Uh-oh. Dr. Mycross continues,
"One brief thought can seal you here. A stronger one can..."
But he's interrupted by Manhunter, who suddenly fires a number of shots at him, saying, "Mycross, you talk too much."
3 shots, 3 capsules preserving 3 old men for some future glory explode.
Paul has just fired on some of the other suspended council members.
Damn you, Paul Kirk! I'm done talking. Now I demonstrate what our strongest thought can do. Convert radiation from the Sanctuary's reactor into one searing bolt to contaminate and destroy you.
And there's a massive crackle as Paul's body is struck by a burst of energy from Dr. Mycross's helmet. Paul falls to the ground. It does not look good.
Mycross would like to gloat, exult, but there is no time. The psionic helmet makes him one with his fortress, lets him see elsewhere, everywhere.
We see Christine running towards Batman saying, "Batman, it's gone wrong. Time to get out." And over some shots, presumably the whole place in turmoil, we see some of the bad guys in their orange and green outfits running with Mycross's voice sort of blaring over the top of it.
They mustn't escape. They know the Sanctuary's location now. All reserve forces cut off their retreat.
Yes, we see Batman, Christine, and, well, unfortunately there's a blam sound effect as the other member of the party is struck by a bullet. Batman cries,
"Lord, Asano!"
Batman holds him in the next panel. Asano says,
I still live, but they will be upon us before I can lead you to the Council's aircraft.
Yes, indeed, we see a swarm of the lads in the orange and green running towards them.
Then...
And there's a sudden machine fire as Dr. Mycross yells,
What? How can it be?
and then we see that it's Colo, cries Christine, and indeed, we see that the gun was fired by their ally who we thought was dead back at the aeroplane. Colo helpfully tells us in the next panel, "When he saw I wasn't fatally hit, Manhunter pinched a nerve to knock me out. I think he knew the rest of you wouldn't leave me, but that wounded, I'd jeopardize your chances."
Like so much else he did. I question it, but can't argue with how it worked out. Let's find those planes.
Yes, and they walk off, leaving the massacred pile of dead bodies that was the council lads that were sent after them. Hooray, just goes to show you, listeners, that crime doesn't pay, probably. Dr. Mycross starts ranting from his chair.
Yes, go to the hangar. You've finished our reserves, but the helmet can still self-destruct any area here.
As he says this, in the foreground we see the battered body of Paul Kirk pulling itself upwards and starting to crawl towards him.
Witness now the second resurrection of Paul Kirk.
And we see Manhunter manage to get to his feet and pull a knife. He stumbles towards his enemy, whispering, "Mycross." He hurls the knife, and with a thud, the handle strikes the doctor in the face.
Meanwhile...
We cut back to the others as Colo says, "The hangar, thank God."
And one plane is a model I can handle. Let's go.
We see him opening the door of the aircraft to let them in.
And...
Batman then says,
All set. Though I'd have sworn there'd be some last dirty trick.
if there is, it is perhaps on the Council. For the healing factor their genetic surgery provided Manhunter has slowed the radiation eating him alive. He moves with pain, with the certainty of approaching death. But he still moves, and therefore is still dangerous.
Manhunter has reached the doctor, and he's taken off his fancy helmet, saying, "Nice toy, Mycross. If I hadn't knocked out 3 of the minds locked into this, you'd probably have burned me to a crisp. I wonder what I can do with it. Hate to think you might rebuild from all this, Doctor." And we see Manhunter putting on the helmet. Mycross yells,
No! You've hurt us, but you shall not destroy us!
He says as he tries to wrestle with Manhunter, presumably to get the helmet back, but Manhunter says, "Watch me," and punches Mycross out.
And somewhere beneath the earth, against the resisting minds of 5 frozen men struggling to preserve a corrupted vision, Paul Kirk fights his last battle and wins.
There's a shot of basically Paul Kirk's skull within his mask as a radiating burst of gold energy emanates from him, causing all sorts of havoc. And then this first panel, page 20, is a massive, soundless, brightly coloured explosion, destroying the council headquarters as the aircraft with Batman and the others manages to pull free just in time. We cut to inside the cockpit as Batman says,
Self-destruction doesn't strike me as a council style, particularly if it didn't include us.
Colo says, "Then," and Christine concludes, "It was Manhunter. He said they'd robbed him of the only piece he'd ever found. I suppose, in his own way, he's taken it back." And a small caption reads,
The end.
So yes, Paul manages to take out and defeat and blow up and destroy the council. Gosh.
Wow.
Oh, I'm exhausted. Listeners, I hope that worked.
Yes.
At this point, I'm not sure if it's taken us so long to get through it.
The story's so visual, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful story that Archie Goodwin's written, and it's told beautifully by Walt Simonson. The storytelling is phenomenal. On some of these pages, you've got like 16, 17 panels sort of thing, and in other pages, it's almost full splash pages, and at no point do you think anything's cramped, at no point do you think anything's unnecessary. It's just really well told, really interestingly told. Keeps the action going, makes you want to read the next panel constantly. It's fantastic.
It really is. And it's basically Batman's guest starring in the Manhunter strip at this point, because it's the rest of the chapters in the saga are done in a similar sort of style with lots of smaller panels and larger panels for emphasis. Again, as I keep saying, we'd encourage you to grab one of the reprinted forms of this if you haven't read it already. Hopefully we've done it justice. Why have we done it in the first place? Well, because it's a revival of the Golden Age Manhunter.
Yes.
Who appeared in Adventure Comics back in the day. I was very pleased when I saw this in the story, because essentially this tells us this is another Golden Age superhero who was active on essentially Earth 1. Because if we assume that the Batman appearing Detective Comics is the contemporary young Bruce Wayne, blah, blah, blah. So that means, in addition to Manhunter, there was Zatara, a Wildcat, Sargon.
Yep.
The Guardian and the Newsboys. I think that's what we'd agreed so far. That was right. And the current stuff in Weird Adventure Comics, despite the letters page, was supposedly the Earth 1 Spectre.
Yes, it was.
But we'll have more thoughts on that very soon in another upcoming episode. So yeah, I mean, it's nice that they use the Golden Age guy, but they don't overdo it. It's all really dismissive in one panel. It's essentially a new creation in a lot of ways, because it's a complete, they bring him back, give him his new suit and his new setup and all that. I like the fact that they took the effort to link it back to the Golden Age version when they could have quite easily just not have bothered.
I mean, they did say that he retired from superheroing pretty much and went back to big game hunting.
Yeah.
And he died essentially in 1945, just checking his final Golden Age appearance. That came out in April 1944 in Adventure Comics 92. So yeah, that does tie up with the timeline for it. So that's
right.
So it does seem to indicate that this character is that Golden Age character, and obviously those stories happened in Earth 1.
Yes. Yeah. I know. And it's another one of these things that if a certain scribe who'd written All-Star Squadron had paid attention to everything that had been going on while he was working at Marvel, then he might not have used certain characters. IDK, I don't know.
I do love the update look to Manhunter. It's a really cool 70s like ninja vibe, and I also love the fact that it's white. It's almost like it's like the idea of Moon Knight, and Moon Knight wears all white because he wants people to see him coming. It's like the opposite of Batman as far as that respect goes.
Sure.
But this is, again, it's white, it's bright, he's got the blade. Having the bladed weapons, I made the Wolverine comment earlier on, but obviously, he's got the healing factor and he's got bladed weapons that he uses quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think he is definitely a contender for being the Earth 1 version of Wolverine.
I bet Multiverse Historian will have some fun with that now that you've said it. You'll probably hit us with all the other DC equivalents of Wolverine, that'll be fun. It's a weird one, because I feel we have to talk about the story overall, even though we haven't read every single chapter, and I've just kind of summarised the main details. Some of that, as I say, was recap, but I mean, when did you what was the first Walt Simonson stuff you read? Can you remember?
Probably Metal Men, but I probably didn't realise it was him at the time. So.
Because I'm mostly familiar with when he took over X Factor, and also he was still working on Thor when I first started sort of reading that tail end of 1985, start 1986. I think he was on covers, but Salim Buscema was drawing it very much in a Walt Simonson style, and in my head for years I thought it always was Walt Simonson, but then had it pointed out to me that it hadn't been. The layouts of the pages, the way that it's told, I mean, compare it even to the Flash story that we've just done, or even any of the Justice League stories we've done, with nothing against them. They're all very solid, but this is next level. This is pushing the form in ways which we haven't really even seen yet. I mean, arguably, some of the page structures that people like Neil Adams, with his diagonals and all that sort of stuff, was a way of breaking it up. But this really holds up, given that it's 50 years old.
If this came out for the first time today, people would be talking about it, saying this is great.
It looks phenomenal. It's so intricate without being too complicated to follow. As you said, it tells the story visually in such a way that it's so easy to read. And as you say, the sheer number of panels that are packed in to each page, but the conversation that's being told in all these panels flows very well and never feels like it's unnecessarily complicated. In some ways, this last chapter we've read is quite simplistic, in as much as they meet up with Batman and they go to this place.
They fight the big boss, basically.
It's the culmination of it all. And as I say, it's really Batman guest starring in Manhunter's sort of story. I think we should quickly talk about the clone aspect, because
Sure.
we're going to meet another one of the clones in Secret Society of Supervillains.
Mhm.
Maybe before the end of the year. I'm not sure if we'll get to it before then.
We'll see, yeah.
Keep your eyes peeled for that, listeners. It'll be interesting to see how that sort of refers back to the stories we've been talking about today. And another clone would pop up and be a member of a 2000 series by Kurt Busiek and I believe Tom Grummett, called The Power Company.
And he's renamed himself Kirk DePaul in that one.
Yes, Lindsay's brother, obviously. Obviously a 70s nightclub entertainer. Yeah, so I'm going to post the relevant covers of that on the socials this week as further context and stuff. Yeah, it's a weird one. We could talk about it all day probably and not do it justice. But, you know, it's obviously fallen into remit because it's a revival of a Golden Age character, but it's all told in such a very modern style.
Yep. One of the things I loved about this is the fact there was no CBC captioning. The captioning was telling the story, the visuals were telling the story, they were both telling the same story, but they weren't repeating what the other one was doing. And as we said during it, there was some captioning that went over several panels where action takes place, but it's not like the captioning saying, and Batman throws a punch, and Batman throws another punch, as Batman's punching. It gave the feel, it told the story, it got you involved, you were there, but the visuals drew you right in, and the pacing of it was fantastic.
Yes, I don't really have too much more to add. I mean, I liked the cast of characters that was assembled, you know, through it all, and there was an epilogue story that was drawn by Walt Simonson after Archie Goodwin died. They discussed doing another chapter, and that first appeared in the 1999 collected edition and subsequent ones since. It's sort of silent and soundless, and basically just deals with Batman and Commissioner Gordon and what we think is Christine dealing with another one of Paul Kirk's clones that's loose in Gotham City. Again, we'd encourage you to track down one of the recent collections of this so you can read that story. It was fun. I mean, we could maybe do it, but no, we're going to be here all night at this rate.
It may be on the DC app if you want to check that.
Sure.
I don't know offhand.
I have no idea. Ross will be able to tell you that one. He's the only person that really uses the DC app. Maybe he'll let us know.
Before we move on to the letters, I just want to mention the fact I loved that this was such an international story. We're jet-setting all over the place. A multi-racial, multinational cast in the story, and also the locations throughout all these stories. We've been all over the world. It's been sensational. It's a bit like a Bob Haney story, except a much more modern version of one.
And told over 6 or 7 chapters. I mean, there's a whole brilliant sequence in Paris that I didn't touch on where I sort of summarising events. Again, because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but I'm sure anyone who has read it will be thinking, oh yeah, I know the bit that you mean.
Yeah.
There's a bit with a little boy sort of observing what's going on.
Yeah,
it's proper James Bond stuff. It's proper globe-trotting adventure. In a straightforward and uncomplicated but still exciting and dynamic sort of type way, I suppose. Shall we move on to the letters then?
Yes, let's jump to Detective Comics 445 for Batman's Hotline.
Yes. First letter goes like this. Dear Editor, with his last issue of Detective Comics number 443, Archie Goodwin finally gave us the Batman as drawn by Walt Simonson. He also teamed up with the Batman and the Manhunter. He also killed Manhunter. I can't help but think of the old Fugitive series on TV. It was unusual because when the show was taken off the air, they ended the series by having Dr. Richard Kimball catch up with his wife's killer. Manhunter is, to my knowledge, the only comic series to end a storyline simultaneously with an editorship and the death of the main character. Yeah, we didn't really touch on that.
No, true.
But the correspondence will do it for us. I'm sorry that Manhunter is gone for good. He has great potential and could have even have won the rights to his own book someday. However, the series as it stands complete is a fine piece of comic book literature. I'm also sorry that Archie Goodwin is leaving Detective. He gave us stories like Death Mask and Ghost Mountain Midnight. He gave the nod for Night of the Stalker, and something I really miss, Detective was the only 100-page comic to have a good cover format. However, the book will be in good editorial hands with Julius Schwartz and a little more consistent with Batman's own magazine. It was a good year with Archie Goodwin. He has a right to be proud of his 7 issues. And that is from William Nutt, Dover, New Jersey.
And editorial reaction is, indeed he does! For the dynamic duo of Goodwin and Simonson not only connected with fans, but with their fellow professionals as well. The 1973 Shazam Awards, given by members of the Academy of Comic Book Arts, included no fewer than 3 for the tech team. Archie was named Best Dramatic Writer, Walt scored as one of the year's Best New Talents, and Himalayan Incident, the first instalment of the Manhunter saga, won the Best Short Story acclaim. By the way reader mail has inundated us on Gotterdammerung, that final chapter of the epic looks sure to cop a few awards itself.
Gosh.
By the way, I've always wanted to call a pub quiz team Gotterdammerung.
I bet you have.
I'm always shot down every time I suggest it.
Had you ever suggested it any time you and I have been in a potential... I don't remember. I would have backed you up completely, probably, for a laugh.
I probably came up with it after our
Right.
last quiz, I'll be honest.
It's been a long time since we've been at a pub quiz. Anyway, right, the next letter then.
Dear Editor, the Manhunter is dead. Why is it that every time I write to DC, I seem to be lamenting the demise of one hero or another? The Manhunter series was one that ranked with some of DC's finest. Along with the Neil Adams Dead Man, the Aparo Giordano issues of Aquaman, and the superb Green Lantern issues by O'Neill and Adams, the Manhunter series displayed some of the truly fine work that can and has come forth from the DC stable, written with a depth and understanding uncommon in far too many comics these days. Goodwin virtually brought Paul Kirk and group to life, aided in no small way by Walt Simonson's stunning art. The series was truly unique. Gotterdammerung was no exception. I'm going to say that every time.
Please do.
The art was the finest of the series. Archie's quick-paced, tight story read like the great American novel, smooth and solid to the ears. Truly a masterpiece. The death of the Manhunter was in character with this unique series. Enough of this. It is a shame you must lose the services of Archie and Walt, but I nonetheless look forward to Julie Schwartz's return to the detective helm. I have read most all of his 100+ issues, and of course respect his ability tremendously. In closing, I wish there was some way you could return Paul Kirk once again to life, but to quote the Batman's words from this very story, "You're professionals. I respect your decision, even if I don't agree with it." And that's from Dan Veltri, North Arlington, New Jersey.
Editorial response says there would be any number of comic book ways of bringing the Manhunter back to life. Many of our readers devoted several pages to their own pet resurrection plots. For the present, though, there are no such plans. Archie and Walt wanted to complete the story of their creation with Gotterdammerung, and we intend to respect that wish. You can never tell, though, after all. Here, the readers rule. And that's interesting, given that, they do bring that version, that one clone back in Secret Society, so we'll have to see when we get there if there's any reaction or what people feel, how people feel about that.
Indeed.
I mean, before we go on to the next letter, we should probably talk a little bit more about the fact they killed them off. Is this the first time DC have killed off a big major character as part of... No, because a few weeks ago, as the crow flies, in issue 203 of Superboy and Legion, Invisible Kid was killed off.
Of course, yes.
So around the same time, and then we're not too far away from, is it Chemical King?
Yep.
Dies fairly soon, but of course Ferro Lad had died.
Ferro Lad, but he'd only just appeared. He wasn't around for very long.
Yeah. Because I remember buying my copy of 203 quite early in my Legion fan career, and I'd meant to mention it earlier, but it was literally within a month or so of this one being published.
Yeah.
It's quite a unique, very modern sort of thing, isn't it, to introduce a new, ostensibly a new character. I mean, they're using an old name and all that, and they do tie him in, but, bringing him into the future and redesign him and all that. It does feel, you were saying how if this was brought out now, it would feel very contemporary. Yeah. It's a very modern thing to create a new character, tell a complete story, and then kill him off at the end.
Yeah.
This feels just light years ahead of time, doesn't it? So
Absolutely,
many ways.
yes.
The next letter then. Dear new editor Schwartz, I'd just like to say I'm very sorry to see Archie Goodwin leave Detective. In the 7 issues that he was editor, I fell in love with the book. So was Archie just there for the duration of the backup strip? That's interesting. First, I love the way the cover was one big painting, not 3 separate little boxes like all the other 100-page books. That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Second, I love the way Archie's Detective didn't have an intrusive theme linking the reprints together, although the book has the best reprints of the 100 pages. Or those little panels above each splash page of some superhero saying something dumb about the story to follow. Oh, controversial. I like those bits. They're cute. Third, I loved Manhunter. It was the most thrilling and intriguing adventure series I ever read in a comic other than Jack Kirby's Kamandi. I'm really sorry to see it go. Now that Tech is your book again, Mr. Schwartz, please keep it the same. Keep it unique. Make it different from all your other books. Experiment. All in all, keep Detective at the high standards of excellence it has had for the past year. And that's from Ken Wolfe. No address given.
Editorial response is, Julie hopes his approach to his second ups at the Detective Bat is just as unique as the home run he blasted with the original New Look Batman. Len Wein's amazing Bat Murderer series continues in this issue, with rookie writer Bob Rozakis swinging away in backup support. How do we stack up against Archie Goodwin's enviable record? Let us know. And I've just noticed that the person responding, their initials are GHL III, which appears to be Guy H. Lillian III. Remember, Guy used to be one of the prominent letter hacks. Looks like he's working for DC now.
Right, okay. Well, that's good.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's good when that sort of happens. It gives you hope. I don't know if that would happen now. Would it happen? I don't know. Letter hacks. Yeah, I mean, because Bob Rozakis was a letter hack, wasn't he? And several other folk. Right, the next letter.
Dear Editor, Detective Comics has been the home of many a character, but none could be compared to the style, wit, fast-paced tongue-in-cheek action of The Batman. We've met John Jones, Elongated Man, Batgirl, Robin, Jason Bard. None could match or surpass The Batman until Summer 73. And Archie Goodwin and Walt Simonson introduced us to the most offbeat of characters, Manhunter. Never has a strip been so well written, plotted, or conceived. Manhunter is also the only character to leave tech not because of irate reader request or poor sales, but because of his strange believability. If Paul Kirk were to die fighting, he'd prefer it that way. How sad and strange, because characters like he are not easily found. And that's from Donwyn Newsom, Newark, New Jersey.
Editorial response: after 3 letters from New Jersey and Ken Wills from heaven knows where, we look way out west for our next comment. And the next letter goes like this. Dear Editor, Detective 443 was nothing short of fantastic. The Bat-Manhunter team-up was a treat for my tired-of-the-same-old-routine comics eyes. I was especially fond of the surprise reappearance of Kolo Mimbea and the scenes in which Asano Nitobe and Batman tangled with the Council's front line while Manhunter and Christine made their way upward to the spectacular final confrontation with Dr. Mycross. This issue's reprint selections were very good, as I always go for the Golden Age Green Lantern. The Spectre story was also very fine. I have a question. Is it possible to buy back issues of your magazines? And that's from Ron McLaughlin, Ramsey, Where's Mont?
Montana.
Montana, I suppose it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Editorial response to that is basically in the negative. Access to warehouse space and hours and manpower that DC can't afford. We then get the long list of reprints which are in this particular issue of Detective, including the Human Bomb story.
Yes.
From Big Town that we did.
In our Human Bombs episode.
Yeah, indeed.
Exciting.
That brings us to the next letter.
Dear Editor, hooray and boo! Thanks for bringing back the Creeper. I've waited for this for 6 years, but why did you get rid of Manhunter? It was the best thing Detective had going for it. Gotterdammerung was a great story. Simonson was at his very best. His art had me completely involved for the whole story. It made me sorry that Archie Goodwin is gone, but he went out in glory. I hope the Creeper gets his series back. He is my favourite hero after Batman and Deadman. If you get the idea I'm a fan of Steve Ditko's Mad Demon of the Night, you're right. Let's face it, fans love a weird or way out hero. Batman, Manhunter, the Shadow, the Creeper, all depend on their uniqueness. They always have us guessing. Keep us that way. And that's from Glenn Carnegie, Jenks, Oklahoma.
Editorial response to that one. Glenn was joined by squads of enthusiastic readers demanding Return of the Creeper. Another example follows. We won't read that because it doesn't deal with Manhunter. And the final letter we're going to read you today goes like this. Dear Editor, over the past year it's been a real job for me to watch Batman rise out of the mediocrity he was kept in for so long. Messrs. Adams, Aparo, Novick, and most recently Walt Simonson all have given the Batman a rejuvenated character that easily outstrips all other DC heroes. You can attribute it to longer ears, angular features, that beautiful cape, or even a skinnier torso. I don't care which you pick. All I know is that DC has given me back that rich and slightly macabre feeling of the 30s and 40s, without the gosh-awful early artwork. Please accept my heartfelt thanks for presenting fandom with a Batman, again worthy of applause. That's from Rod Leonard, Wichita, Kansas. Nothing really to do with the Manhunter story, but it does mention Walt, and it's interesting just to think about where Batman was at this time, because there's not so many Batman stories that we do from around this period outside of Brave and the Bold.
True.
There will be another issue of Batman, though, very, very soon indeed.
Very, very soon, yes. So that's what the contemporary letter writers thought. What do you think? You can write us a letter electronically via email to the f2podcast@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on social media, because boy have we got some amazing bonus content lined up for you this week.
Have we? Okay.
Yes, that's your department. Yes,
I said, got the Power Company issues featuring Kirk DePaul, got a few foreign reprints, might even steal a few photographs out of Peter's artist edition so we can show some of them off.
That'll be cool.
Yeah.
So if you want to see that on Facebook and Instagram, we're at the Earth2 Podcast, and at Twitter, we're at podcast_Earth2, and it's the number 2 for all of our social media.
Yeah, do get in touch and let us know what you think of this Manhunter series. I'd really be interested to hear what our regulars have to say about this one, because we really enjoyed it, and I think it's quite well regarded. But so, yeah, get in touch and let us know what you think. If you're feeling generous, you could please go to wherever it is you receive your podcast and give us a positive review. I'm told such things are good for our visibility and all that sort of stuff. If you're feeling even more generous, you go to our coffee page, you'll find that in our link tree, and you can buy Peter the price of one of the many coffees he's had to consume whilst editing this episode.
Indeed. And keeping Cafe Nero in business.
Absolutely. We're not sponsored by Cafe Nero, we're just saying. We'll be back again next week, obviously, and all that. Take care, folks, on that bombshell.
I've been Peter.
I've been David. I'm off to soak my head in a bucket of ice cold water.
And I'm off to hunt men.
Good luck with that. We'll see you next time on
The Earth 2 Podcast.
Transmatter cube activated. Return coordinates set for Earth Prime.
bonus pinups. Page 24 is that. Okay, let's see what they are.
It's Linda Lusardi.
Oh, it's some nice images of... I just heard what you said.
With the coming of another dawn, they are ready. Paul Kirk, man of two eras, resurrected by the Council's super science. Asano Natobi, master ninja, instructor to Manhunter. Plus, Christine Sinclair, woman. And Kola
They should have mentioned the fact that she was an Interpol agent there. Right,
yeah.
Anyway, sorry.